Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Driver's Garage. This is part 3 of rebuilding a Holley carburetor. We rebuilt this 600, right? And parts 1 and 2, parts 1 I showed you how to tear it down and clean it, and parts 2 I showed you assemble it. Now I'm going to do the most important part, how to put it on and make it run. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to put it on, which is not hard to put it on. I mean, let's face it, all you do is set it on the intake manifold and then hook up the fuel line, hook up the throttle linkage and, you know, throttle return springs and the vacuum stuff. And then I'm going to show you what to do with how to make it run right. So there's idle mixture screws, there's float levels, and sometimes you're going to have to get in and adjust the vacuum secondary, which is this is a vacuum secondary carburetor, depending on your on what you're doing. So let's get started. So this is what we're working on, my 1964 Galaxy Project Mud Bomber. As you can see, I have the carburetor that was on it off already. Doing a little bit of work to that. The power valve was bad, so I had to replace it. So I got the 750 vacuum secondary off, and we're going to throw this one on it. And this is a true test of how well of a carb rebuilder I am, and how well this works after I rebuilt it. So it doesn't have any fuel in it. It's never been on an engine yet, so this is going to be the first time it's actually run on anything. And we'll see if I just do it right or screwed it up. And seeing how this is a 4-barrel intake, obviously. This is a Ford 428 FE big block. That carburetor is a little small, but it'll do the job for what we're doing on this. And for right now, it's not going to rev out. Just the 428 needs more air, so obviously. But there's not a big camshaft in this engine, so it'll work for what we're doing in this episode. Okay, the first thing obviously to do is to set the carburetor on the engine. So make sure you have it correct. There we go. And then I have all the nuts and washers down here. So we'll put that and that one there. Just keep picking up. Okay, so I wasn't here because it's hard to get to. You never turn the lights. There we go. All right, see a little better. I already have a ratchet here with this is a 1/2 inch. Most of the stock stuff was 1/2 inch for Holleys. Some of the aftermarket carburetor stud kits, they use come on, stop doing that. They use like metric nuts on 5/16 studs, because that's what these are, 5/16 studs. Which you can probably figure out where they're made by that when they do stupid stuff like that. There we go. Now I'm holding the ratchet like this. See? My hand is up here over the top of the extension. Why? Because I don't want to have it way out here for all that leverage. You don't need a lot of leverage. You only torque these to 10 to 12 pounds. If you put a lot of leverage on them, you're going to break the corner of your base plate off on your carburetor. So there's no need to go to Gorilla to tighten up your carburetor. See? Like so. Now we got to hook up everything to the carburetor. All right, I connected the fuel line here from the hard line from the fuel pump to this hose that I'm just running. I just grabbed a piece of hose off the shelf. If you're gonna do this permanently, make sure you spend the time to make, I don't feel like cutting this, so spend the time cutting it right. Now, we got to connect the throttle linkage to the carburetor. Now, I have the throttle linkage completely disconnected even back here because I'm going to do some modifications on it here later on. But for this purpose of this video, you need to pay attention to what was on your old carburetor. And specifically, this one has like a little rubber grommet deal that goes here for this setup. And it is on the old carburetor. So one of the things we had to take off the old carburetor is this rubber piece here. What am I doing? Point the camera right. Trying to get this off one-handed. All right. It's a little hard to do one-handed. There we go. So this is what I needed off of this carburetor. So make sure you pay attention to what linkage pieces are necessary to hook up your new carburetor to your car. Now, if you just pulled off your carburetor off and you're putting it back on the car, then this is not a step you need to worry about so much. And then this one uses this little plastic doohickey here. It's like a bushing. And then the throttle linkage goes in there, like so. And this new camera, it's so easy for me to put my finger in the my finger in the way of the camera lens. Gotta be careful of that. All right. Apparently, so that's in, and there we got to do the other side down there. See down there? So bear with me a second. I'm gonna need both hands for that. All right. Now I suggest using 2 carburetor springs. I have a second one here, which I'm gonna use. Which runs like, I run it right up through the middle here of this bigger one, and like so. There we go, like that. So, all right, now over here, okay, on a Holley, if you're running a vacuum advance, this is where you connect it. I am not currently running a vacuum advance on this distributor, so I'm going to leave it unplugged from a vacuum advance, but I need to put a vacuum cap on that hole. So I'm going to get out my little vacuum cap collection here. See my vacuum cap collection here. And stick a vacuum cap over that hole. That way we don't have a vacuum leak. There's another vacuum here that I already plugged off. And this one is really, I don't know what the hell that does. That one's, like, this Holley was designed for a specific use. This is an electric choke. You see how the choke is already adjusted right now? All right, so I'm gonna adjust the choke so it's wide open for this purposes, because I don't have electric wire hooked connected to it, so I'm just gonna adjust it wide open. But I will show you where a good position to have it originally adjusted. So these are like these little 3 screws here on the electric choke cap. There we go. All right, so ooh, it's still too tight, huh? All right, you should be able to turn this. Oh, okay. So I don't think I have it connected correctly. So when you set the choke, by pulling the throttle back, and it should bring it up on the choke on this right here. This is a step for your high-speed idle. And your choke here should be a little bit looser than this. It should be where you could probably, like a Phillips head screwdriver shaft, like so. Should be adjusted for that. Now, I'm not going to be doing that to shut it off. I'm going to have this thing wide open because I don't want it affecting the adjustment on this car right now, and it's not a step that I need to worry about. So I'm going to have it wide open. There, okay. For right now, and we can adjust that later for your particular use. I'm going to you can crank your engine to get the fuel bowl filled, or you could do what I'm going to do here, which is pour fuel down the vent tube here, and to pre-fill which is basically priming the carburetor. So hang on one second, I'm going to get some fuel. So this is like an old soup can that I pinched. You can use like a squeeze bottle, ketchup bottle, you know, like one of the squeeze style ketchup bottles that you'd find at like a restaurant style. And you can see I'm just pouring fuel right down the vent. Like so. And you can pour a little bit down the carburetor here. That'll give it a little bit of a shot of gas until it fills up. You really don't need to fill the secondary, because once the engine's running and your fuel pump is actually working, it'll fill the secondary really fast anyways. The only thing you want to do is get the engine to light off pretty quickly. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down on the accelerator pump arm here until I feel like it's actually squirting gas out of the accelerator pump nozzle, and that's what it's doing now. And the engine should be ready to start. I'm going to open the garage door. For this purposes, I'm going to use my remote starter button. That way I can be under the hood while cranking the engine. The key's in the on position inside the car. So let's see what happens. But didn't have it set up right. Hang on. Got the remote starter button set up correctly. There it goes. All right, let's see if it starts. Wow, that was easy enough. The idle speed's pretty good. I'm going to bump it up a little bit. There you go. First things first, make sure there's nothing leaking. I don't see any leaks anywhere. stumble. If it doesn't do that, you got a problem. Watch again. All right. Now in a minute, I'll hook up a vacuum gauge to show you that. Like one full turnout on this setup. Everybody's setup is different. Now the other thing we need to do is to check the float levels, which is going to come around to this side. And let me kind of I'm going to zoom in here. That's the word I'm looking for. All right. See this screw here? Float levels. And you want to, when it's running, you want to just slowly open it. And if it's too high, fuel will start running down here before you even get the screw out. Right? But the screw is not doing anything. And there's no fuel coming out, which means that the fuel level should be right below this hole. Which means that the float level is set too low right now. So I'm going to put this one back in for right now. Now you can check these screws with the engine off if you're worried about it, especially if the engine's real hot. I'm going to do the back one now. This without blocking the camera, but see how fuel's starting to come out? Alright, before we even get the screw out, well, that one's set a little high, so we need to bring this one down and this one up. I'm going to shut the car off. I got a big flat-bladed screwdriver, and for like that, and a 5/8 wrench. And in this case, I'm going to use a ratchet wrench because this makes it a lot easier. Now, this one needs to come up, so we need to just crack this big screw on top, the set screw, like that. You're just cracking it. And then you need to loosen it. So to get the float level to come up, you need to go counterclockwise like this. Now, I'm going to do a full turn on the front, and then I'm going to tighten it back down like that. And make sure you, this is why I'm suggesting you do this when the engine's off, because there might be some leakage of fuel from the fuel pusher. Now I'm going to grab my towels here, wipe this off, and then I'm going to do the opposite on the back there, on the back bowl, which is I'm going to see if I can do this reaching all the way over. All right, crack. I'm going to tighten this one full turn, just to see where we're at. All right, put my tools off in here just to be a little safer. Now let's check the level on this one now. What you want is to be able to rock the car down and have it just dribble out, and the front one is still low. So what I'm going to these screws, then you would want to have it, Holley says to put it in the, right in the middle, but I like to go a little below middle, like 1/3. I get better response that way, and I don't seem to have the problems with tuning the idle mixture when it's at high level. So it doesn't like run rich at idle. I'm gonna shut the engine off and check the back. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna show you how to adjust your idle with your vacuum gauge. So you have to have your vacuum gauge connected to a manifold vacuum port. That is a port that actually has vacuum pulling at idle. This one here does not. That's why you hook up here. This is ported vacuum. And that one only pulls vacuum when the throttle blades have opened. That's why you connect your vacuum advance to that. So let's start it back up. So right now it's pulling 17 inches of vacuum, or 18. It's really good. So 19, and I'm going to back this idle speed down a bit, where I like it. I'm just going by ear. So that's about 900 by ear. Now, what happens when you turn the idle screws in, and you see how it starts to drop when you don't have enough? Alright? Then it goes back up when it's got to find a sweet spot. If you give it too much, it'll start doing the same thing. It'll start dropping again. So, yeah, you find the highest point, and you do this on both sides, and then you shut it off, and then you screw in your idle mixture screws, count how many turns there are, and then you turn them back out so they're even. So you don't have like this one a turn and a half, and this one 2.5 turns, okay? You want it even. Now this one is really idling really nicely here at this RPM, and it's pulling 18 inches of vacuum, which is really nice. And it's doing real well. It's very consistent. I just shut this off for a minute. I just leave it here actually. This is your accelerator pump adjustment, right? In the last video I showed you how to adjust that to get a basic start. But what you want to be able to go right off the idle without any hesitation. If it hesitates, then you might want to make this longer. If you got giant holes and you can't get rid of it, before you make wholesale changes to your carburetor, there's a really old Holley saying, is that 80% of your problems with a carburetor off idle are lack of initial timing. So, if you have a problem that you got a big hole right off of idle, before you make wholesale changes to your carburetor, like changing squirters or anything like that, stop. Put a timing light on it and make sure you got some initial timing in it. Otherwise, you're just going to be fighting it and you're going to be wondering what's wrong and you think your carburetor's bad. Okay, so those are the basics for setting up your carburetor on your engine. Like I said, those are the basics, right? There's going to be other things like jetting and stuff, but your jetting is going to be very specific to basically what your car needs. And then there's other videos out there that will show you a little bit about that. But for this, all I wanted to do was show you how to take your rebuilt carburetor and put it on your car and make sure it's set up correctly so it runs right. And as you can see, it looks like I did a good job on this, and it works good. So we're going to go take it for a test drive and see if we did a good job on this. Okay, just got back from the test drive and she's running good, though the 600 is a little small for this 428, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. I didn't build the 600 for this 428. I built it for a 350 that I'm maybe a Vortec 350 that I'm building, and I'm probably going to be. I'm still flip-flopping between fuel injection and the carburetor. I have a carbureted intake now. I have a good carburetor for it, and the 600 would work perfectly for it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'll answer all the questions on these how-tos as much as I can, if they make sense. Sometimes I got questions that don't make any sense. So please try to make sense.